Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. Government shutdown negotiations remain deadlocked. China's Navy expansion fuels global concerns. Gaza faces a prolonged and uncertain reconstruction. A fragile ceasefire attempted in Sudan. Trump administration challenges SNAP payment ruling. Supreme Court upholds passport gender requirements. Tesla shareholders approve massive pay package. US and Russia engage in disinformation campaigns. CBO hack highlights cybersecurity vulnerabilities. Climate summit yields limited progress. Kazakhstan officially joins Abraham Accords. Orban navigates US-Russia relations. UN relaxes sanctions on Syrian leader. The government shutdown remains stalled amidst negotiating divisions. The ongoing government shutdown persists due to persistent disagreements between Republican and Democratic factions, primarily concerning the extension of Affordable Care Act subsidies. Negotiations have stalled repeatedly, threatening continued government operations and impacting numerous federal agencies and workers. Key players include Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, and various Democratic and Republican senators. Recent developments highlight a critical impasse. Republicans have proposed a short-term funding measure, intending to fund a handful of federal agencies, while simultaneously seeking a separate vote on extending the Enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies. However, this approach has faced staunch opposition from Democrats, who argue it represents a surrender to President Trump's demands and fails to address the core issue of healthcare affordability. Multiple sources indicate that Democratic senators are unified in their rejection of a standalone vote on the subsidies, citing voter sentiment and constituent pressure. Senator Richard Blumenthal expressed concerns that such a move would be perceived as a capitulation. Senator John Ossoff has voiced particular anxieties regarding federal workers, including those at airport hubs and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, potentially missing paychecks. Republican leadership, led by Thune, has expressed optimism regarding a potential resolution, but acknowledges the challenges. Thune indicated a willingness to remain in session over the weekend and into next week's Veterans Day recess if necessary. However, the possibility of a protracted shutdown remains, contingent on the willingness of both parties to compromise. The Senate's negotiations are further complicated by the recent midterm elections, which have amplified the pressure on senators to align with their constituents' priorities. The situation underscores the deep partisan divisions within Congress and the significant hurdles to reaching a swift resolution to the shutdown. The possibility of a continued shutdown remains a significant concern, with potential ramifications for government services and the American economy. China's Ascendant naval power launch of Fujian and expanding military production. China has dramatically escalated its naval ambitions with the official launch of the Fujian, its newest and most technologically advanced aircraft carrier. The launch, confirmed by state media shortly after a commissioning ceremony led by President Xi Jinping, represents a pivotal moment in Beijing's strategic maneuvering within the global maritime landscape. The Fujian is distinguished by its incorporation of electromagnetic catapults, a feature enabling aircraft launches at considerably higher speeds compared to conventional carrier designs. This upgrade underscores China's commitment to modernizing its naval capabilities and solidifies its position as possessing the world's largest navy based on sheer vessel numbers. Concurrent with the carrier launch, satellite imagery has revealed a startling surge in the growth of China's military production sites. These images showcase a significant expansion of shipbuilding facilities and related industrial complexes across the country. This rapid expansion suggests a concerted effort to bolster China's military-industrial capacity, further fueling concerns about the country's accelerating military modernization program. The increase in production facilities directly supports the development and deployment of advanced naval vessels, including the Fujian, and highlights the scale of China's ambitions to challenge established naval powers. The combination of the Fujian's launch and the expansion of military production sites represents a clear signal of China's determination to maintain and increase its influence in the Indo-Pacific region, intensifying the strategic competition with the United States and its allies. The technological advancements incorporated into the Fujian, coupled with the massive investment in production capacity, paint a picture of a China rapidly transforming its naval forces and solidifying its role as a major global maritime power. Gaza Reconstruction, a complex and uncertain future. The reconstruction of Gaza remains a profoundly challenging undertaking, fraught with political obstacles and logistical complexities. The core issue revolves around securing international funding, which is contingent upon establishing a viable and agreed-upon reconstruction plan. Several plans are being considered, each reflecting differing priorities and visions for the future of the territory. The Trump administration's Gaza Riviera proposal, envisioning a high-tech, affluent development under U.S. trusteeship, contrasts sharply with the Palestinian Authority's plan, prioritizing the preservation of refugee communities and the restoration of pre-war neighborhoods. Egypt and the Arab League have also proposed reconstruction plans, emphasizing community involvement and a 5-year timeline. Key actors involved include the Israeli government, which has expressed reservations about funding reconstruction efforts in areas under its control, and the Palestinian Authority, seeking to rebuild Gaza under its governance. International donors, including Saudi Arabia and the UAE, are crucial to the process, but their willingness to invest is linked to security assurances and the establishment of a functioning Palestinian state. The reconstruction process is expected to be slow and incremental, with incremental urbanism, rebuilding within existing damaged communities, likely to be a key strategy. However, significant obstacles remain, including the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas, which threatens to derail any progress. The Palestinian Authority's plan emphasizes the restoration of refugee camps, recognizing the significant population of Palestinian refugees who have been displaced throughout the region's history. The Israeli government, however, has indicated a reluctance to provide funding for areas controlled by Hamas, complicating the process. Ultimately, the future of Gaza's reconstruction hinges on a resolution of the underlying political conflict and a commitment from all parties to work together towards a sustainable and peaceful future for the territory. The need for water is a critical and immediate concern, with many residents struggling to access this basic resource amidst the ongoing devastation. The Sudan war ceasefire proposed amidst continued violence and humanitarian crisis to the ongoing conflict in Sudan, primarily between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, has seen a proposed humanitarian ceasefire announced by the RSF following a day of drone attacks on Khartoum. The RSF, led by Gen Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, stated its agreement to a truce proposed by the United States, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, citing catastrophic humanitarian consequences and the need for urgent aid delivery. This follows the RSF's capture of El Fasher after an 18-month siege, a city experiencing famine conditions and marked by reports of systematic killings and torture. Despite the truce announcement, the Sudanese army remains skeptical, having previously rejected ceasefire proposals, viewing them as tactical maneuvers by the RSF. Defense Minister Hassan Kabroun emphasized the government's commitment to continuing preparations for war. The RSF's agreement comes amidst a worsening humanitarian crisis, with over 60,000 people fleeing El Fasher and widespread reports of atrocities committed by the paramilitary group. Survivors describe unimaginable suffering and systematic violence. The proposed truce aims to facilitate the delivery of aid and address the root causes of the conflict, but its implementation remains uncertain due to the Sudanese army's continued opposition. The U.S. and other international actors are pushing for a lasting peace, while acknowledging the complex dynamics and deep-seated mistrust between the warring factions. The humanitarian situation in Sudan is dire, with aid organizations warning of the imminent collapse of local community kitchens, crucial lifelines for millions affected by the conflict. The UN is planning an urgent session to address the human rights violations occurring in El Fasher. Investigations into alleged violations by the RSF are underway, with the arrest of a fighter accused of executions. The conflict has created the world's largest humanitarian crisis, with over 24 million people facing acute food shortages. Satellite imagery confirms the RSF's construction of a massive berm around El Fasher, further isolating the civilian population and hindering aid access. The RSF's actions are being scrutinized by international bodies, and the potential for further violence and human rights abuses remains a significant concern. Trump admin asked appeals court to pause judge's requirement that it make full November SNAP payments. A federal judge in Rhode Island ordered the Trump administration to fully cover food stamp benefits for tens of millions of Americans in November, sparking a legal battle and significant disruption for recipients. The judge's ruling, delivered on Thursday, stemmed from a lawsuit filed by several cities, nonprofits, unions, and small businesses arguing the administration's partial funding of SNAP benefits was unacceptable and constituted a failure to meet its obligations. The judge emphasized the immediate risk of hunger for 16 million children if payments were not made promptly. The administration swiftly appealed the ruling to the First Circuit Court of Appeals, attempting to halt the order. Justice Department lawyers argued the court's intervention was unwarranted, claiming it would interfere with ongoing shutdown negotiations and potentially exacerbate the situation. They asserted the USDA had already resolved all relevant administrative burdens. Initially, the USDA responded by releasing funds from a contingency fund, allowing states to issue partial benefits, representing 65% of maximum allotments. However, the judge deemed this insufficient, citing the agency's failure to act expeditiously and the resulting harm to recipients. This prompted a second round of recalculations and a shift to full payments. States across the country are now grappling with the logistical challenges of reprogramming their systems to process the full benefit amounts. Some states, like Illinois, anticipate distributing payments as early as Friday, while others, such as Pennsylvania, anticipate a longer delay due to the complexity of the recalculations. The USDA provided states with guidance on how to implement the full benefit amounts. Throughout the legal maneuvering, the administration's rationale, primarily blaming Democrats for the government shutdown and questioning the legitimacy of SNAP recipients, has been repeatedly challenged by the plaintiffs and the judge. The administration's attempt to shift blame and justify its actions was met with criticism for its perceived disregard for the needs of vulnerable populations. The situation highlights the significant impact of the ongoing government shutdown on critical social safety net programs. The legal disputes underscore the complexities of navigating federal regulations during periods of political gridlock, affecting millions of Americans reliant on SNAP benefits. The Supreme Court allows Trump administration to require sex at birth on passports. The Supreme Court has issued a significant ruling, allowing the Trump administration to reinstate the policy requiring individuals to list their biological sex at birth on U.S. passports. This decision, reached through the court's emergency docket, effectively halts a lower court order that had previously blocked the administration's policy. The court's unsigned order asserts that displaying passport holders' sex at birth poses no greater offense than displaying their country of birth, framing the requirement as simply attesting to a historical fact without differential treatment. The ruling represents a setback for transgender and non-binary Americans who have challenged the policy, arguing it violates equal protection rights. The plaintiffs, including transgender activist Ash Lazarus-Orr, contend that the policy increases the risk of harassment and violence. Hunter Schafer, an actor and transgender woman, expressed concerns about the impact on her travel experiences. The Supreme Court's decision aligns with a broader trend under the Trump administration to limit protections for transgender individuals, mirroring a previous ruling allowing the enforcement of a ban on puberty blockers and hormone therapy for trans minors. The Justice Department, under Attorney General Pam Bondi, celebrated the victory, asserting that the policy applies equally to each sex and does not discriminate based on sex. The department also highlighted the court's decision as a victory against woke gender ideology. The ruling follows a federal lawsuit filed by the ACLU and other plaintiffs who argued that the policy's classification based on sex warranted heightened judicial scrutiny. A federal appeals court had previously denied the administration's request to block the lower court's order, citing the government's failure to meaningfully engage with the plaintiffs' claims. The Supreme Court's expedited consideration of the case, taking over a month, underscores its urgency. The decision mirrors a previous ruling allowing the enforcement of a ban on transgender service members in the military. This is the second time the conservative Supreme Court has upheld a Trump administration policy targeting transgender individuals. The ruling provides a temporary pause in the legal challenges, but the underlying constitutional questions remain unresolved, and the legal battles are expected to continue. Tesla shareholders approve $1 trillion pay package. Elon Musk has secured a landmark pay package approved by Tesla shareholders, potentially worth up to $1 trillion over 10 years. The vote exceeding 75% approval allows Musk to accumulate substantial Tesla stock if the company achieves ambitious milestones. Notably, Musk, already the world's richest individual, could become the first trillionaire under this arrangement. The initial deal was driven by concerns that Musk might depart the company if the assurances of control weren't granted. To unlock the full potential of the payout, Tesla must attain a market capitalization of $8.5 trillion, deliver 20 million vehicles and 1 million robots, secure 10 million subscriptions for full self-driving, and operate 1 million robotaxi vehicles. These targets represent significant operational and financial hurdles for the electric vehicle giant. The approval followed a Delaware judge's previous rejection based on board composition concerns, a matter now resolved with Tesla's reincorporation to Texas. Despite facing challenges like declining sales and profits and reduced government support, Tesla executives emphasize a strategic shift towards autonomous vehicles, including robotaxis and humanoid robots. Musk highlighted the robot's potential as a dominant product, envisioning a global market with widespread adoption. He expressed a desire for control to prevent removal from his position. The approval reflects a bet on future technologies, particularly robotics and artificial intelligence. However, the success of the pay package hinges on Tesla's ability to meet these lofty goals, which remain uncertain given current market conditions and competitive pressures from companies like Waymo. Investor sentiment regarding Tesla's future is mixed, with analysts acknowledging the potential of the robot market, but also noting the company's existing financial difficulties. The approval signifies a pivotal moment for Tesla, potentially reshaping its governance structure and fueling its long-term strategy. Nancy Pelosi announces retirement and shifts in congressional trading. Nancy Pelosi, the former Speaker of the House, has announced her retirement, effective at the end of her term in January 2027, marking the conclusion of a decades-long career marked by significant political influence. At 85, she served as the first woman speaker, holding the position from 2007 to 2011 and again from 2019 to 2023. Her departure signals the end of an era in American politics. A significant aspect of Pelosi's legacy is the phenomenon of investors closely monitoring her and her husband, Paul Pelosi's, stock trades. This trend has created a substantial market following, evidenced by the Nancy Pelosi Stock Tracker account on X, formerly Twitter, which boasts over 1.2 million followers. The duo's trading activity, particularly through funds like an ANC and a GOP, has demonstrated notable success, often outperforming the S&P 500. These funds, managed by Dan Weiskopf of Tidal Financial Group, replicate Pelosi's trades, capitalizing on the immediate market reactions. Pelosi's trading has been a subject of scrutiny and debate, with some critics questioning whether lawmakers are using non-public information for financial gain. Despite this, she has consistently defended her family's trading activities, asserting the importance of participation in a free market economy. She has also expressed support for bipartisan efforts to ban congressional stock trading, a proposal gaining momentum with advocates like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Elizabeth Warren, and even receiving support from President Donald Trump. Recent disclosures include a transfer of $100,000 in Apple stock by Paul Pelosi to a Catholic university, a move that further highlights the family's continued trading activity. While Pelosi's retirement will end the direct influence of her trades, the trend of investors tracking congressional stock activity is expected to continue with other members of Congress. The ongoing debate regarding congressional stock trading remains a central issue in discussions about ethics and transparency in government. The Pelosi Act, renamed by Senate Republicans, underscores the persistent efforts to regulate this practice. Trump unveils deals to lower U.S. weight loss drug prices. President Donald Trump has announced agreements with Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk aimed at reducing the cost of popular weight loss drugs, Zepbound, Wegovy, and Ozempic, addressing a significant affordability challenge. These deals will allow Medicare beneficiaries to pay as little as $50 per month for certain GLP-1 medications, a substantial decrease from current prices often exceeding $1,000 without insurance. The agreements include expanded access to Medicare and Medicaid programs, with an estimated 10% of Medicare enrollees eligible for the reduced rates. The core of the initiative involves most favored nation pricing, aligning U.S. drug costs with those in other developed countries. In exchange for this approach, the pharmaceutical companies receive tariff relief and expedited regulatory reviews for their medications, specifically utilizing the FDA's Commissioner's National Priority Voucher Pilot Program to shorten review times to 1 to 2 months. Eli Lilly's Zepbound will initially be sold at $289 for the lowest dose and $449 for additional doses through its Lilly Direct channel, while Novo Nordisk will offer Wegovy's pill at $149 if approved, mirroring similar pricing in Europe. Both companies will also lower prices for Medicare, Medicaid, and direct-to-consumer patients. The agreements are intended to address the growing obesity crisis and the limitations of lifestyle interventions. The initiative's success hinges on FDA approval of the oral GLP-1 tablet Orforglipron by Eli Lilly, which will be priced at $149 for the lowest dose. Healthcare professionals and patients are cautiously optimistic. Dr. Kimberly Gudzoon, Chief Medical Officer for the American Board of Obesity Medicine Foundation, highlighted the potential to open access to these medications for previously unaffordable patients. Michelle Rose, Program Coordinator for the Healthful Eating, Activity and Weight Program at Johns Hopkins Medicine, expressed the transformative impact for patients struggling with weight management. The deals represent a significant step toward making effective weight loss medications more accessible, although ongoing negotiations with state Medicaid programs and continued FDA approvals remain crucial factors. The Trump administration's focus on most favored nation pricing signals a broader strategy to control drug costs within the United States. U.S. military actions and Russian disinformation campaigns. Recent events involve coordinated military actions by the United States alongside a significant disinformation campaign originating from Russia. The U.S. military conducted a lethal strike in international waters of the Caribbean, resulting in the deaths of 3 individuals aboard a vessel suspected of trafficking narcotics. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth confirmed the operation, initiated by President Trump, targeting a designated terrorist organization. This action represents part of a broader campaign resulting in 70 deaths and the destruction of 18 boats, aimed at curbing drug flow into the U.S. The U.S. Navy briefly detained 2 survivors before returning them to their home countries, with one presumed dead following a search by the Mexican Navy. Simultaneously, a fabricated video, identified as part of the Storm 5016 disinformation operation, is circulating, depicting Ukrainian soldiers threatening Erika Kirk, the widow of conservative influencer Charlie Kirk. Experts believe this video, meticulously crafted to resemble a genuine Ukrainian military operation, is a deliberate attempt by Russia to manipulate public opinion and undermine support for Ukraine. The video utilizes a familiar narrative, leveraging current divisive issues to promote a specific Russian agenda. Furthermore, the Trump administration's aggressive approach to combating drug trafficking has sparked controversy. The administration has declared an armed conflict against drug cartels, initiating strikes without judicial review, based on a classified Justice Department finding. However, this strategy has been met with skepticism from members of Congress and human rights groups, who argue for prosecution instead of lethal force. The administration has also been focusing on linking Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to the drug trade, despite Venezuela's limited role in cocaine production. The administration's actions are restricted to maritime targets and do not extend to land strikes, including within Venezuela. Despite these efforts, the administration has not provided public evidence of narcotics on the targeted vessels or their affiliation with drug cartels. The administration's strategy remains controversial, raising concerns about due process and the potential for escalation. CBO hacked China suspected in ongoing breach at the Congressional Budget Office. CBO has been the target of a significant cyber attack, potentially exposing communications with congressional offices. An email alert circulated this week, prompting staff to avoid clicking links from CBO accounts due to suspected compromise. The incident is currently ongoing, according to the Senate Sergeant at Arms. Initial reports, confirmed by a U.S. official, point to Chinese state-backed hackers as the likely perpetrators. The CBO's economists and analysts provide crucial cost estimates and budget projections, making the office a target for foreign intelligence services keenly interested in U.S. economic policy. This hack is part of a concerning trend of cyber attacks linked to China, occurring amidst heightened U.S.-China trade tensions. Notably, in July, suspected Chinese hackers breached Wiley Rein, a prominent law firm advising U.S. companies and the government during the trade war. The CBO has identified the security incident, implemented immediate containment measures, and established enhanced monitoring and security protocols. CBO spokesperson Caitlin Emma declined to elaborate further on the responsible party. China consistently denies allegations of conducting cyber attacks, stating its strict combat against all forms of cyber attacks in accordance with the law. The situation is further complicated by the prolonged federal government shutdown, which has strained cybersecurity resources. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, issued an emergency order in September, responding to a hacking campaign targeting federal agencies. The CISA planned to furlough a large portion of its workforce during the shutdown, exacerbating the vulnerability of federal networks. The ongoing cybersecurity challenges highlight the persistent threat posed by both state-backed and criminal hackers to U.S. government and private sector systems, demanding continuous vigilance and robust defense strategies. The CBO's investigation continues as it works alongside Congress to address this critical security concern. COP30 Climate Summit marked by diminished support and missed commitments. The ongoing COP30 Climate Summit in Belém, Brazil, is facing significant challenges due to a decline in international political support and a failure of many nations to meet previously stated commitments. Key figures, including UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer and Prince William, have expressed concerns about the waning momentum for climate action, with Starmer stating a consensus is gone regarding combating climate change. The summit is characterized by a reduced number of participating leaders, with many major nations notably absent, including the United States, Russia, and China. A central issue is the lack of concrete action, as only a small number of countries have submitted updated plans to reduce carbon emissions. The UK's decision to withdraw from its flagship $125 billion Tropical Forests Forever facility, intended to support rainforest protection, has caused considerable frustration among the Brazilian hosts and raised questions about the UK's commitment to climate finance. Prince William emphasized the urgency of the situation, urging leaders to act with urgent optimism for the sake of future generations. The summit is grappling with the aftermath of devastating, extreme weather events globally, such as Hurricane Melissa, which intensified rainfall associated with the Category 5 storm by 16%, according to Imperial College research. This highlights the tangible impacts of climate change and the need for immediate action. Furthermore, the U.S. President Donald Trump's rejection of climate science and broader globalist concepts has fueled division and undermined collaborative efforts. Despite these challenges, leaders are engaged in 2 weeks of negotiations focused on securing additional funding for countries already affected by climate change impacts. The summit's success hinges on overcoming political divisions and achieving tangible agreements to address this pressing global issue. The situation is compounded by the absence of key players and the UK's sudden withdrawal from a previously committed fund. The focus remains on securing finance and implementing concrete steps to mitigate the escalating effects of climate change. Kazakhstan joins Abraham Accords, U.S. announces. United States President Donald Trump announced Thursday that Kazakhstan is joining the Abraham Accords, marking the first country to do so since 2020. This development represents a key foreign policy goal for the Trump administration, aiming to expand the scope of the accords. The accords, a signature accomplishment of Trump's first term, involve normalization of relations between Israel and several Arab nations, including the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. The administration believes this addition is just the tip of the iceberg, signaling a broader effort to build international partnerships. The announcement followed a meeting between Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel and President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev of Kazakhstan. Discussions focused on expanding commercial trade and investment opportunities between the two nations. Top administration officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, emphasized that the agreement goes beyond simple diplomatic relations, creating a special and unique partnership with all countries involved in the accords. Vice President J.D. Vance further underscored the momentum behind the accords, stating that the second administration is continuing to build upon Trump's initial success. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff hinted at the announcement during a Miami financial conference, revealing that a signing ceremony would take place soon. Secretary of State Rubio also met with Tokayev, reinforcing the commitment to deepened cooperation. Kazakhstan's office stated the country's readiness to engage in constructive dialogue on multifaceted cooperation. The administration's strategy aligns with Trump's earlier statement to Time magazine, predicting Saudi Arabia would lead the way toward the accords, and that Saudi Arabia would ultimately join. While the accords aim to normalize relations and foster economic partnerships, progress toward normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia remains contingent on a viable path to Palestinian statehood, a position currently rejected by Israel. The expansion of the Abraham Accords remains a central focus for the Trump administration, as it seeks to solidify international alliances and promote peace and prosperity through these agreements. The announcement signifies a significant step in the continued development of the accords and their potential impact on regional geopolitics. Orban's dilemma balancing Russian oil and U.S. pressure of Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, finds himself in a precarious position, attempting to navigate the complexities of U.S. pressure regarding Russian oil while simultaneously pursuing a strategy that aligns with Russian interests and his own political agenda. The core of the issue revolves around Hungary's heavy reliance on Russian oil supplied through the Druzhba pipeline, accounting for 80% of its supply by 2024. This dependence has fueled tensions with the United States, who have imposed sanctions on Russian oil companies Lukoil and Rosneft, pushing for a rapid reduction in Hungary's reliance on Russian energy. Orban's strategy involves leveraging his relationship with Donald Trump, who he views as a great leader and a potential counterweight to Western pressure. He hopes to persuade Trump to ease the pressure on Hungary until a resolution regarding the war in Ukraine is reached. Orban has consistently opposed Western military and financial aid to Ukraine and has ruled out Ukraine's NATO and EU membership, portraying Trump as a pro-peace president. The attempted summit in Budapest between Trump and Putin, initially planned to facilitate a shift away from Russian oil, was ultimately canceled due to White House concerns. Orban, however, remains optimistic about the summit's eventual occurrence, echoing similar sentiments from Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov. The Czech Republic serves as a contrasting example, having successfully transitioned away from Russian oil by investing in infrastructure improvements and adapting its refineries to process Brent crude. This success highlights the feasibility of reducing reliance on Russian energy. Hungary's argument that its landlocked status prevents a swift transition is undermined by the Czech example. Under U.S. pressure, Hungary is facing a critical decision regarding its energy future, with the potential for a significant shift in its relationship with both the U.S. and Russia. The situation is further complicated by logistical challenges, including the composition of Russian Urals crude and disputes over pipeline capacity between Moel and Janaf. The Hungarian government's ability to adapt and overcome these hurdles will be crucial in determining its long-term energy security and political standing. UN lifts sanctions on Syrian president ahead of White House visit. The United Nations Security Council has approved a U.S.-sponsored resolution to lift sanctions on Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa, occurring just ahead of his planned visit to the White House next week. This decision marks a significant shift in international relations following 12 years of civil conflict in Syria, culminating in the ousting of Bashar al-Assad in December 2024 through a rebel offensive. U.S. Ambassador to the UN Mike Waltz characterized the UN's action as a strong political signal, indicating a recognition of Syria's transition into a new era following Assad's departure. Al-Sharaa's sanction removal stems from his leadership of the Islamist group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, previously linked to al-Qaeda. Notably, the United States removed HTS from its list of foreign terrorist organizations in July, a move that facilitated this sanction relief. Simultaneously, the UN also lifted sanctions on Syrian Interior Minister Anas Khatab. Syria's foreign minister expressed gratitude, posting on social media, acknowledging the support provided by the United States and friendly nations towards Syria and its people. Al-Sharaa's upcoming White House visit on Monday follows a previous meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump in May. During Trump's Middle East tour, Trump described al-Sharaa as a tough guy with a very strong past, and following that initial encounter, Trump stated that al-Sharaa possessed a real shot at pulling it together. Prior to his leadership role, al-Sharaa's former group, HTS, served as al-Qaeda's affiliate in Syria, severing ties in 2016. The international community's response to this transition highlights a growing willingness to engage with al-Sharaa and Syria, contingent on demonstrable progress towards stability and peace.